Hey everyone, Gaijin here. Alright, so for the longest time, whenever I would go to a convention, or when I would ever do public speaking, or even sometimes some of my streams, I always get people asking me, why do you call yourself Gaijin? This happens a lot, used to happen a lot of conventions actually, because I call myself Gaijin here, and on my original channel, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen me from, I call myself Gaijin Goomba. Why that particular word? Why Gaijin? So, today I kind of want to explain, why do I personally take it? Because it's like, you see this word getting thrown around all over the place. There are different people who use it for their names, there are companies that use it. Is it a good word? Is it a bad word? What is it? And I kind of want to answer some of that, but really get into why I personally took that mock here. Because it's a lot deeper than you may realize, and I've just never really had the time to fully explain it. It would have been a panel all itself. So the first thing that we got to do is you have to actually ask, what does Gaijin mean? It is two kanji. It is Gai and it's Jin, or Soto and Tito. It just depends on the kunyomi and the onyomi readings. But it literally just means outside person. And the interesting thing is that originally, this particular word was not used for foreigners. It was actually just used to refer to people who were outside of a clan, outside of a family, just outside the group of people that were known to one community or another. Let's see here. So one example actually comes from the Heike Monogatari. Let me see if I can do this. Gaijin mo naki tokoro ni heigu o tonoe, which is basically assembling arms where there are no Gaijin. It's a small excerpt taken out, but it does kind of show that the word Gaijin does not refer to foreigners, because in the Heike Monogatari, they're not there. It's literally just one group of folks in Japan who are saying that outside people are just Gaijin. Literally outside people. Then there was another one. This actually comes from a no play, Kurama Tengu. There was a scene where a servant objects to the appearance of a traveling monk. This one's a little long, bear with me. Ginpei ryoke no dougyo tachi no ono no goza sorofu ni kayau no gaijin wa shikarube karazu soro. Basically, a gaijin doesn't belong here where children from the Genji and Heike families are playing. Sorry, I botched this read so many times from nerves that I just wanted to get it right. Sorry, I need to work on my Japanese super bad, at least when it comes to the old no stuff. But basically what that whole sentence means is that a gaijin doesn't belong here where children from the Genji and Heike families are playing. So again, this is referring to the word of gaijin as an outsider, or an unfamiliar person, and possibly an enemy. I'll explain that a little bit more, but I mean, there's... So here's the thing. There is nothing wrong with there's nothing inherently wrong with the concept of familiar and unfamiliar people. That's kind of how we stay safe as a society. But the term gaijin has evolved away from meaning general people who are outside the known community and has become just literal outside people from the outside. Ow. So then you kind of have to beg the question then, is gaijin as a word bad? It's kinda. So let me explain why that's kind of a loaded question. In that, on paper, yes, gaijin is technically a bad word, because it is a conjured slang word by Japanese society. Now, some may joke or even revel in the word, but it's still negatively used within Japan, therefore it is still a negative word. This goes the same to any bad word that people are trying to use to transcend out of its own negativity. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anyone in the comments or anything like that saying that I'm trying to compare the word gaijin to something as insane as like the N-word. No. that is a level of horribleness that personally, because of who I am, I won't have to experience. I do have that privilege. I recognize that. And I am not saying that it even comes close to comparing. But what I am trying to say is that I'm trying to explain the correlation. And like I said, there have been efforts on people's behalf to try and rectify the meaning into something that makes it more positive. Like, you've got the YouTuber Gaijin Hunter. He does a whole bunch of Monster Hunter videos and branches out into some other things time to time. Absolutely good dude. Then there's Retro Gaijin. I predominantly know his stuff from his streams, where he'll just go out with friends to just places in the middle of the night in Japan and just literally have chat, sit there and watch them. It's really popular. Go check them out. Go check both of them out if you haven't. And then there's Gaijin Pot, which is a company. It is an online site where different Gaijin can go look up job postings in Japan and essentially get employment through it. It's a really good resource. But all three of these use the word Gaijin. So this comes to, why did I take it? Why did I take the moniker of Gaijin? And the reason for that is because I hate it. I actually really hate it. You cannot possibly understand how much I hate the word Gaijin. And it's the reason why is because as a concept, it automatically determines the perspective that Japanese have on foreigners. Like that, it is instantaneous, and it's not a good way. It's in a very bad way. In this case, Gaijin, or outside person, infers that the individual foreigner knows nothing about Japan's society, language, people, unspoken rules, spoken rules, all these kinds of things, and that they're not expected to know any of these things. Now, on the surface, that seems kind of like a positive perspective, because it gives the foreigner a lot of room to goof up. Like, oh, they're just Gaijin, it's fine. Like they did a social faux pas. Oh, they're just Gaijin, it's fine. But the problem with that is that this also instills an instantaneous idea that foreigners are incapable of understanding Japanese societal nuances, language, culture, expectations. There is this automatic, because of the existence of this word, there is this automatic understanding that because they are Gaijin, because they are a foreigner, they will not know anything and are not expected to know anything. And on the surface, that can seem good, but when you've there, when you've been living there, it just hammers you. It really, really does hammer you. So if I hate the word Gaijin so much, if I despise the word Gaijin so much, why did I take that name? It would seem kind of silly to take up a name that of a word that I hate so much, right? Well, could you imagine the great irony if someone who calls themselves Gaijin ended up making a living by explaining some of the most nuanced, complicated, and ancient aspects of Japanese culture and history over the last decade? Yeah, that's literally it. How ironic would it be that from a global perspective, the word Gaijin would not be associated with ignorance of Japan, arrogance of its culture and history, but rather the understanding of it, and not only that, the teaching of it. I know this sounds horribly egotistical. I know this sounds horribly egotistical, but the last 10 years of my life have been trying to prove a point, and that is Gaijin demo Nihon no bunka wo wakaremasu yo. Even foreigners can understand Japanese culture. Anyone can. All you have to have is just the drive to do it. It always tickles me. It always tickles me whenever, this happened just the last time I went to Japan. Me, Aki, Tomo, Hutch, we all went to this little ninja house in Tokyo. God, where in Tokyo was it?
Yeah, it's called the Ninja Trick House in Shinjuku Kabukicho. If you can't get to Iga, it's a solid alternative for getting some hands-on ninja experience, getting some instructions on where to strike the body with the sword, as well as doing a few rounds of shuriken target practice, which I'm surprisingly good at. But yeah, Ninja Trick House. Check it out if you're in the Tokyo area.
Anyway, I'll put up pictures. And so the guide, who's going to all these different areas of ninja-ness, and they're like, hey, does anyone know what this is called? Does anyone know what this is called? And got it. And when we came to the Donden Gaeshi, which is that little spinny ninja door, and I was just kind of timidly raising my hand oh, over here. the guy just looked at me, and in front of this big group of people, they were just like, it was something like "Nihonshin janai" or something like that. Like something, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, "Oh man, is this person Japanese?" And I'm like, come on, man. We're capable. It's possible. A lot of us work really hard in order to get to that point where we feel like we should be given the benefit of the doubt. And it's just like, I took the monk era of Gaijin when I started my online profession because I wanted to rip out every single fang, every tooth out of that word. I wanted to disempower it with every fiber of my being, and empower it with the exact polar opposite of what it's supposed to mean. That's why I took it. I didn't take it to be ironic. I didn't take it because it was easy. I took it because I wanted to make a point. And again, I know that sounds really egotistical, and it may even sound a little petty, but it's just something that absolutely drove me crazy. And it took a long time for the people in the community where I lived, because I lived out in a little Inaka town. I lived out in a little countryside town where, like, people know of me, which is a little scary because if you can't communicate with them, if you can't integrate with them, things get really complicated really, really bad, or really, really fast. I remember watching Trash Taste, that podcast. Love them. Connor, Joey, Giga, love those boys. I remember them talking about some of their frustrations about living in Japan, and it's like, take those pressures and take it outside of a city where no one cares who you are. You go to live in a little Inaka town, everyone cares about who you are, and they will find everything they can about you. So, this kind of moves on into what I think the removal of the word Gaijin can do for people's perspective. And here's the thing, is that more often than not, people in Japan will actually make the attempt to meet you halfway. But that only happens when you make the attempt and show that you have some understanding. If you can attempt to show that you can function in Japanese society with language and following rules, like spoken or unspoken, yada 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 yada, a lot of them will meet you halfway. And that's certainly something more than I can say about a lot of other places I've been to, particularly in the US. It's like, you know everything or just don't bother showing up. In Japan, they will at least try to meet you halfway. The problem, though, is that it is so rare that they give you the benefit of the doubt. Even after being there for a long period of time, months at a time, you still don't get the benefit of the doubt because of how you look. It's not that... What drives me absolutely crazy is when people say Japan is xenophobic. Japan is not xenophobic. I'm sorry, they're not. I've been studying them for almost I've studied that entire country for probably 18 years. I've worked abroad there. I've studied abroad there. Ever since I came home from working abroad, I go back every single year because I want to keep in touch. They're not xenophobic. Some people are, but there are xenophobic people in every single country ever. Because that is a human condition. That is not based on a society. What it is that they don't hate Gaijin. They're just discomforted and worry around Gaijin. And when you consider that the only sort of source that they have with Gaijin interaction is the media, yeah, I can't imagine how that would go horribly, horribly wrong, can you? Where the problem happens, and I've seen this happen so much. I've actually seen an online skit where people make fun of it because it does happen that often. You could go up to someone and just look and just ask for directions. And unless you're like Asian American, like unless you can kind of possibly fake that you might be Hafu, there have been so many times where people would just look at me and they would just almost scream no English and then walk out. Like, but we're speaking in Japanese. But it's like, that's problematic. And it's not necessarily like I'm trying to say that everyone in Japan should be perfect at English, but if someone is attempting to try and meet you halfway, meet them halfway. You know, foreigners are not scary. We're not scary. We're really not. Even some of the scary looking ones of us, we're not scary. What Japan needs to realize is that we are capable of meeting them halfway, if not all the way. A lot more of us can meet them all the way. And Japan, I feel, really needs to stop looking at the majority of foreigners and assume that we know absolutely nothing. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't people that do know absolutely nothing. That is on us. That is our responsibility to try and fix. But this isn't like it was 20 years ago. Heck, it wasn't even like it was 10 years ago. Don't be afraid, you know? Feel the situation. If there's anything that I've seen people in Japan do very, very well, it's a concept called kuki oyomu, which is to read the atmosphere, to literally read the air. And it feels like that all that gets thrown out the window when a face like this shows up. The benefit of the doubt needs to be the new default. Because while unspoken rules and the need to understand societal norms needs to be on the responsibility of us, when it comes to linguistic issues, that is not a thing. It's really not a thing. In this day and age, the language barrier is not that big a problem because we have so much tech. In my phone alone, I have 3 different dictionaries. I have a comprehensive translation app. And I know for a fact that there are 3 or 4, maybe 5 different companies that have made apps and software and even hardware where you can speak the language into it and it speaks out another language. And most of the time it's pretty simple. And every time I've seen it used in Japan, people actually think it's really cool. Like, I can actually see the visible worry melting off their face when they can understand, oh, this person's just looking for one thing or another. And it's simple. It's easy. This needs to be, in my opinion, this needs to be the new norm. The concept, the worry and dread that the presence of a gaijin brings, it really is just kind of outdated. It feels like it's really outdated. Because, like I said, people will meet half, if not all the way, and the people that can't will find a way to do it. I know I've been complaining. Like, I'm making this sound like a one-sided problem with Japan, but truth be told, a lot of the things that I'm currently complaining about are things that I really suffered under maybe 10 years ago. From what I can tell, things are changing. Like, when it comes to the international scope, when it comes to everyday Japan, things like international relationships are becoming a bit more normalized. The issue of hafu is actually being addressed, like, psychologically and sociologically. Like, it's no longer just this throwaway thing, like, oh, you're a hafu, and then that's it. There's some horrible psychological things that come with that. There's huge identity crises that come with that. And despite over-tourism really being an issue, I mean, that made headlines, I think that Japan does have a better understanding of outside people. I just hope that we kind of get to a point where the negative connotation of the word gaijin can finally be expunged and removed from society. Because, like I said, it is okay to not be trusting of complete strangers. That's fine. But that is not a hard thing to read. When someone is in trouble or just looking for directions or just whatever, you can read that out. It's real simple. But anyway, that's why I want to take on the Monkey of Gaijin. I think in a lot of ways that's why a lot of us take on that word. Despite how much we may hate it, despite how much of a bad word it may or may not be. I want to disempower it because it's bad for society. All I'm asking Japan is you give us the benefit of the doubt. And for God's sake, if someone comes up asking for directions or something in Japanese, trying to talk to you in Japanese, please don't scream no English and then leave. じゃあお願い。外人が怖くないよ。マジで怖くないよ。外人でも日本の文化も言葉分かられますよ。もちろん難しいんだけど、いつも頑張っています。ごめん、僕の日本語が全然ダメだ。でも、こんなの意味を分かっていますか？だから、外人と話している時に落ち着いてください。そして、我々が日本語を使ったら、No English と言わないでください。それが怖い。お願い。外人も信じてください。いつも毎日頑張っていますよ。So, that's all I've got, guys. That's why I call myself Gaijin. And, yeah. I hope this has at least been slightly enlightening as to why I've chosen this as my legacy. But I hope it makes a whole lot more sense now and kind of gives you guys a little bit of an understanding of what foreigners do go through in Japan. It's not as bad as it is in other places, but it can still be pretty rough. So, thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, this is Gaijin, signing out.